Hey, what's going on, everybody? I got a build project for you guys. So this is a 09 TL. We are going to be throwing this on Airlift 3S. So we're going to bag this. I'm going to walk you guys through a bag install on this. Now, this is not a how-to. I'm not going to get every little thing that you need to do, but this will be pretty helpful if you're looking to bag your car or do it yourself. It'll give you a good idea of what's needed. Bagged a couple cars before. That's mine right there. 9th Gen SI 15. It's on Airlift 3P. Like I said, we're going to be doing Airlift 3S on this. And this should be a fun one, guys. Stay tuned for the bag build. Alright guys, so we're doing a little bit of mocking up. When you get the Airlift 3S, it really only shows you how to wire this with one compressor, as you can see right here. So I'm actually going to build the wire harness for this. This is actually what came with my 3P. Really all this came with was the harness, pressure switch, and a couple wires, and one relay. We're going to need two because we're going to be running two compressors. I've mapped this out already. I've pretty much made my own wiring diagram, which I'm going to upload for you guys, and you can check it out if you want to build a harness for yourself for the 3S for two compressors, because you do have to make the harness yourself regardless if you're going to be doing one or two compressors. This isn't plug and play like 3P. The 3P harness is a lot easier. So yeah, I actually got to make this harness, which isn't going to be too bad, but you know, it's just easier to have plug and play. But you know, we'll get this knocked out and walk you guys through the whole process of how we're going to be mapping this out and how we're going to build this harness. Alright guys, we are in the trunk. Right now I'm just roughly mapping out how we're going to, you know, have everything mounted and where we're putting everything. This tank is actually a 4-gallon Airlift. We actually got a different tank because this one has side ports. We're going to want rear to get water traps in there to fit correctly, and also we wanted one with another port because this requires a pressure switch. So we actually got a 5-gallon tank with 6 ports, drain at the bottom, 5 in the back. So that's going to be a lot better for this install, but right now the one that came with it is just in here for mock-up purposes. So right now this is just essentially laying out where we're going to be putting everything. From here we're going to map out the harness and get this all wired up so it fits in with the actual layout of our design. Alright guys, so we're going to go ahead and attack this wiring. We're going to start by removing this back seat, the lower seat. We might have to remove the upper. I'm not sure yet what I want to do, but we'll get there. But really this is pretty simple. This is similar to a lot of newer Hondas. You just pull out these tabs right here. Just pull out, and it should allow us to get the back seat out. Alright guys, so those tabs, they're a little bit tight, but you know, if you use both fingers, you should be able to pop it right out, and it'll allow the back seat to loosen up. You should be able to slide it right on out of there once you get the seat belts out. Alright guys, back seat is out. Like I said, these are the tabs. Next move, we're going to get this section out right here. This should come out with us removing few of these what look to be 10mm bolts. So let's go ahead and get a section of this out so we got access to the trunk. Alright guys, so I had a hell of a time with that. It's really in there. I had to like squat in the middle, get my arms underneath of it, and like freaking power clean it up, but that thing's out, man. So we got access to our trunk so we can run our air lines, power lines, and I got the trunk disassembled a little bit more. So as you can see, that's the back of the rear seat, and we got some room where we can see right through there so we can run our wires, our lines, and get everything exactly how we need to. Alright guys, so what we got is 4-gauge wire with a fuse and all that, of course. If you're running two compressors, I would highly advise running a 4-gauge wire. We're going to be running this to a distribution block where the compressors will be going into. Really what I'm doing now is just trying to figure out where we're going to come through the firewall, and we're going to start taking out all of these plastic pieces here, because that is where we are going to be running our power wire. So most door sills are similar. They just pop up with your hand. Be careful, it is plastic, so With access, we're going to be putting that wire probably through this channel with the factory wiring. Take the tip panel cover off. So you can see I've already kind of been looking here. Looks like there was an alarm stalled prior here, so this has definitely been, you know, wired before. Not the best job wires hanging, but so we got access. We just got to find our firewall hole, figure out where we want to come in, take that out, and we should be able to get right to the trunk. All right, guys. So I believe we found our firewall spot. We got everything, all the sills taken up, leading right up to the actual firewall. So if we look under here, I actually took out this piece right here. This all has like a foam protection up against the whole firewall here. But if you look, when you take that piece out, sorry for the crappy camera. Actually, let me get a light here. There we go. I don't know if you guys can see, but there is a triangle underneath here. It is. Oh, it's right here. I don't know if you guys can see that, but there is like a triangle that is indented and presses out right here. Now if we go look at the firewall side in the engine, right next to the brake booster, it might be hard to see, but that little triangle that's poking out, you can see it. That is where that is on the inside. So you can see that there's nothing right here. It's clear. And if we go on the inside, it's also clear. So what I'm going to do, oh, there you go, that's a good camera angle right there. So that's the triangle. It's indented in there. It's pressed out on the outside. That's exactly the same spot. I'm going to take a unibit with a drill, and we're going to drill out right underneath of that triangle so we can get our 4-gauge wire right to the firewall. All right, guys, so I got a unibit on our drill. I'm going to go from the inside, and I'm going to drill right under that triangle. So let's go ahead and get this hole drilled. All right, guys, hopefully you can see that. Got the hole started. It's not the cleanest, but it'll look better once we're done. So let's go ahead. You can see it's clear right through there. And let's go ahead and keep drilling. All right, guys, so hopefully you can see there is our hole. It's perfect. 4-gauge fit right through it. And I actually got this little rubber grommet here, so I'm gonna try to get that through the actual hole for our 4-gauge wire to slide through. All right, guys, we are through the firewall. There is our rubber grommet 4-gauge. I'm gonna run the wire right through that, so it's protected on that side. Get out of the car, go under the hood. You can see the grommet right there. So let's go ahead and get this wire in. All right, guys, the wire is ran. So we are actually through our firewall, perfect fit, grommet. If we go under the hood, you can see right where it's going in. Hopefully you can see that. Let me try to put a light in there for you. Terrible camera work, sorry guys. There you go, you can kind of see it. And of course you want it to go into your fuse, so we're just gonna run that right to the battery from the fuse, and of course we're gonna wire loom this up, but we got our wire ran through the firewall, guys. All right, guys, so we started cleaning this up a bit. I don't know if you can see up in there, but got some of those foam rubber pads back in there. Just got it coming right out. Ran right behind the kick panel, and then we're just gonna run the wire right underneath of our carpet. So we're just gonna run it all the way to the back. Got all of our trim out, and from there we can start building our harness into place. Got this tucked away, and from here we just got to finish wiring this power wire up, and then we can take it from there. Wires ran, guys. Coming right from our grommet right down. And our trim is going to cover all this up. Got it coming right out with the factory wiring harness right here. And from here, this wire is going to go to our distribution block. And then from here, we're going to start building up our harness to fall in line with this. Alright guys, we got our power wire 4 gauge coming right through the trunk now. Here is our distribution block right here, so it's going to fall right there somewhere. I'm going to get into that next, but we got the power wire completely ran. As you can see, always try to follow what the factory does. Got it zip tied in right where the factory has it, so the wire's under the carpet. Ran all the way up. Can't see it. I tidied it up under the hood a bit, so zip tied right here. Wire loomed. Fuse right there. And then once we're done, the last step is going to be connecting this to the battery. But we got it all ready, set up. Wires ran. Power wire's good. We can now actually start making our harness in the trunk. Alright guys, so we have started putting the harness together. How I'm going to do this is, we're still hopefully going to be able to get to the spare tire once this cover is on. The tank should be right here, okay? So the tank is going to be towards the back over the spare tire. Then on this little upper surface right here, that's where all of our components are going to be. So that's where our 2 compressors and our ECU is going to be for the management. So the harness essentially is going to be plugging in right here, because that's right where the manifold will be. And what I've started to do is put together our harness. So this might look a little bit spaghetti-ish at the moment, but what we have is 3 wires coming out of the actual 3S harness. Remember, I said you do have to build this harness yourself. It's pretty straightforward. You got an ignition, which is 12 volts when the key is turned. You got a battery, which is a constant 12 volts, and then you got a ground. So I mean, it's the 3 usual main components to make any aftermarket accessory run for the most part. So what I have here so far is there is a pressure switch with the 3S system. So this is the pressure switch, which will be going into the tank. This has a ground coming off of it and a positive coming off of it. So our positive is an ignition source. So in our ignition wire, we have 2 wires essentially. We have our actual ignition wire from the harness, and then our ignition wire for the actual pressure switch. So right now, what I'm going to do is I have the actual ignition wire from my 3P setup that I had spare of, so I've connected it to give him the actual Airlift wire here, so which is pretty cool. We're keeping it all Airlift harnessed. So I'm going to go ahead and run this up to the front, and we're going to get an ignition source right off of our fuse box. So we're going to go ahead and try to get that wire ran now and get everything to fall into place. Alright guys, so here's where we are. So that is our manifold harness right there. This is from the ignition. It's going to go to our power switch. Alright, so they're really the only 2 wires that we're going to be having out that have to run somewhere. Got the harness started to get wired in. This is AL002. This is a 12 volt battery that's going to be going to our distribution block. Actually have the ground already grounded, so I utilized a stock ground right there. So that's coming right out of the harness to the ground. And then we have our other one, which is the ignition. Ignition is going all the way up to the front of the car, and this is the pressure switch wire that has to go to the ignition as well. So they're both ignition 12 volt accessory powered. I was looking to try to do in the fuse box and utilize a fuse, but these are the really little ones, and you know, it's not like it used to be where you can kind of just cram a wire in there with a fuse. Kind of don't recommend it because it doesn't stay in there good. So lucky for me, this has an aftermarket alarm that was kind of messy. I cleaned it up, and what I did is I wired in our ignition wire. You can see it right here. Ignition AL004, that's coming right from the harness. Remember, I utilized my wire from my 3P harness, so this is AL004 ignition going right to our ignition wire from the alarm. I'm just going to tidy this up, tuck it in, and I did use a voltmeter to ensure we got, you know, the correct wiring and all that. So we're good. We're wired into the ignition here in the kick panel, and from here we can finish building our harness. There we have it, guys. Cleaned up, kick panel clean, wire, power wire coming out, all good. So now let's prioritize the rear and get this whole harness built up. All right, guys, our harness is slowly coming together here. It's kind of hard to see, but we're really just doing it to the diagram that I made. Essentially, the other two here on each side is going to have a compressor going to each one and a ground coming out of each one. This is also tied into the pressure switch. So if you see those two grounds are going to this ground, which is for the pressure switch. These two go into our distribution block. So it's coming together. Looks kind of messy right now, but you know, once this is a little bit further along, I'll bring you guys in and show you what it should look like. Alright guys, harness is coming together. See, we got our pair of Viair relays. Got essentially everything wired on here. The only thing that is going to be in addition onto these relays is these two prongs are going to have each compressor ran to them. So really all we have to do is put this into the car now, wire her in, and from there we can set everything up. Alright guys, I'm trying to capture as much of this as I can for you guys on camera. So here's our harness. It's pretty much made. This is what it's going to look like going into the car. So we got our relays here. These two are grounds. They're black, going right to ground. So we'll find a spot for them. This is the ground going to our pressure switch on the tank for the 3S. And then here is our two power wires. This is going to go to the 4 gauge right in from the car. So the 4 gauge that we ran is going to go right in here. This is a distribution block. There's our power lines coming out. And like I said before, those two prongs are what are going to have the actual connector from the Viair compressors. So that's what our harness should look like, guys. Alright guys, so we're starting to get the harness in the car. It's almost in here. We just got to do some grounding, but this is to give you a better idea how this should look set up in the car. So this is our distribution block. Like we were saying, we wanted our 4 gauge wire from the battery coming into here, and then it's distributing to our relays, okay? And this wire right here, that is the AL002 from the harness. So that is the last wire we had to piece together from what we saw on the garage floor. Is we had to connect in our actual 3S harness here, and this is the 12 volt AL002 battery wire from that. So these are all constant 12 volts. That's what we want here. So that is actually, you know, wired in there now. Remember, we got this grounded, and we also have the ignition up in the front under the dash. So this is completely wired in now. All 3 wires are included in our setup. Here is our relay. And keep in mind, the ignition wire and ground go to the pressure switch. So back out a little bit here, you can see distribution blocks, relays, pressure switch. Alright, so that's how it's going to fall together. I just got to clean this up and get it in here nice, and we should be good. Alright guys, we are essentially done with our wiring harness. So we got our 2 pressure switch wires running out, distribution block mounted. I got relays mounted, grounded. I'm just hoping when I put these carpets back in, it doesn't really mess with it. But essentially, here's our management harness right here. That should be above the rug. Everything else is going to be under the rug, except for these 2 wires, which everything is going to be coming out of this left corner here to run right to the tank. So here we go, guys. Harness is in car and set up. Alright guys, just one final go over of how this is set up here. So as you can see, we got our relays mounted. We do have an empty prong, if you remember. That is for our compressor. on both of those empty prongs. There's a positive and a negative for the pressure switch right there. And we got our harness. All this is going to be coming out of our left side. And I just self-tap some screws in that we're going to use for our grounds. So we got our grounds for our compressors. The positive is going to the relays. And then this is all going to the pressure switch, the positive and the negative. And then we just have our harness right here that's going to go to the management.